Have you ever run into someone so entitled that they honestly think their child can do no wrong? Now picture that same kid making your life miserable, and every time you try to hold him accountable, his mother, Karen, brushes it off with the same excuse. He's just a kid. What might sound like a harmless annoyance quickly spiraled into something far darker for me and my family. It turned into a nightmare that nearly destroyed our peace of mind. And let me tell you, when the police finally got involved, their opinion of Karen's innocent boy was very different from hers. It all kicked off one summer evening. My wife and I were sitting on the porch, relaxing, watching our kids laugh and play in the yard. It should have been one of those calm nights where the sound of crickets fills the air and the warm breeze washes away your worries. But instead, Karen's son Tyler came tearing down the street on his dirt bike. No helmet, music blasting so loud it rattled our windows, weaving so close to our mailbox he nearly knocked it over, laughing like he owned the road. At first, I tried to shrug it off. Kids act recklessly, right? But in a matter of days, things got worse. Tyler started cutting across our yard with his bike, carving up the grass with deep tire marks. He even tossed soda cans onto our lawn like it was his personal trash dump. My kids grew so scared that they would dash inside the house the second they heard his engine roar. I decided to confront Karen. She stood in her driveway with that smug grin plastered across her face, arms crossed, sipping her coffee like she was queen of the block. When I explained what her son was doing, she just rolled her eyes and said, "Relax, he's just a kid. Stop being so uptight." The arrogance in her tone made my blood boil. My family's peace was crumbling, and this kid was only getting bolder. The breaking point came when Tyler cornered my daughter at the end of the street. He revved his bike within inches of her, spraying rocks and dirt across her legs, then laughed right in her face. My little girl came home crying, her knees scraped and her spirit broken. That was the moment I realized Karen wasn't just excusing him, she was enabling him. She believed her HOA status and so-called influence gave her family immunity. But what Karen didn't realize was that there's a line. Even spoiled children can cross it. And when they do, not even the law will look the other way. That line was about to be crossed in a way she would never see coming. The next morning, after my daughter's tears had dried but the memory still burned, I marched over to Karen's house. I was determined to keep calm but firm. She opened the door, same smug smirk, coffee cup in hand, like she was too busy and too important for my problems. I said, "Karen, your son went too far last night. He terrified my daughter. This has to end." Her reaction? Laughter. Not an ounce of remorse, no hint of concern, just a smug chuckle. "Oh, please," she said, waving her hand. "He's just blowing off steam. Your daughter needs to toughen up. Boys will be boys." That phrase hit me like a slap across the face. She wasn't just excusing Tyler, she was mocking my daughter's pain. My fists clenched at my sides, and it took everything in me not to explode. I told her flat out, "If this continues, I'll have no choice but to call the police." For a split second, her smirk faltered. Her eyes hardened into a glare sharp enough to cut steel. She leaned forward and hissed, "Do that, and you'll regret it." Then she slammed the door in my face. And just like that, things escalated again. That very afternoon, Tyler came back, circling my house like a vulture. This time, he had 2 other teens with him. They whooped, hollered insults, and dared my kids to come outside. When I stepped onto the porch, they revved their engines and sped off, showering my driveway with gravel. That night, I barely slept. Every faint rumble of a motor made my wife bolt upright. "What if they come back? What if they hurt the kids?" she whispered. Her fear only stoked my fury. The following weekend, Tyler and his crew took things to a whole new level. They trespassed, racing their bikes straight through my backyard. They ripped up the grass, destroyed my kids' soccer net, and cackled like it was the funniest thing they'd ever done. When I shouted at them to leave, Tyler gave me the finger and yelled, "You can't stop me! My mom runs this neighborhood." That was it. Those words told me everything. Karen had pumped him full of this delusion that he was untouchable. And she honestly believed her HOA pull would shield him. But she was dead wrong. Because I wasn't going to the HOA. I was going to the police. So when I finally picked up the phone and dialed, my hands trembled, not with fear, but with pure, unfiltered frustration. I had given Karen fair warning. I had tried to settle things with neighbors, but her smug defiance left me no choice. When I called the police, the officer on the other end listened carefully as I described the harassment, the trespassing, and how her son had deliberately targeted my daughter. His tone shifted the moment I mentioned that last part, suddenly sharp and serious. Within 20 minutes, a patrol car rolled slowly down our street. The flashing blue lights caught everyone's attention, and sure enough, Karen stormed out of her house in her robe, ready for battle. Tyler trailed behind her, arms crossed, wearing the same cocky smirk he always did. The officer stepped out, calm but firm, and asked to hear both sides. I laid everything out, the dirt bikes, the trespassing, the intimidation of my daughter. He took notes as I spoke, his eyes occasionally flicking toward Tyler, whose smug grin slowly began to falter. Then it was Karen's turn. Arms folded tight across her chest, she snapped, "This is ridiculous! He's just a kid. Boys ride bikes. These people are overreacting." She jabbed a finger at me like I was the problem. "My son has every right to enjoy himself. If they don't like it, maybe they should move." But the officer didn't flinch. He turned to Tyler and asked directly, "Did you enter their property without permission? Did you intimidate their daughter?" Suddenly, Tyler wasn't so confident. He stammered, unable to answer. Karen quickly jumped in. "Don't answer that, honey. You don't owe them an explanation." That was her mistake. The officer's expression hardened. "Ma'am, if your son was on their property without permission, that's trespassing. If he intentionally frightened their daughter, that's harassment. These aren't kids being kids. These are crimes." Karen's jaw dropped. For the first time, her mask of arrogance cracked. She sputtered excuses, insisting Tyler didn't mean any harm. But the officer wasn't interested in excuses. He issued a formal warning and made it clear. One more incident and charges would follow. As he left, Karen turned her venom on me. Her face twisted with fury, she hissed, "You think you've won? This isn't over." Tyler sulked behind her, clearly shaken, but still trying to puff himself up with bravado. That night, for the first time in weeks, my family felt a flicker of relief. But deep down, I knew Karen wasn't the type to retreat quietly. If anything, the police visit had only lit a fire under her, and I was right. The very next morning, things exploded. I woke up to shouting outside. At first, I thought it was just the usual morning bustle, but when I stepped onto the porch, my stomach dropped. Karen was in the middle of the street screaming at the top of her lungs, finger pointed straight at my house. Tyler stood beside her, red-faced and defiant, while a crowd of neighbors slowly gathered. "This man is harassing my son," she screeched. "He called the cops on a child. He's trying to ruin our lives." Her voice was laced with fury, but underneath it, I heard desperation. I stayed calm. Loud enough for everyone to hear, I said, "Karen, your son isn't a little child anymore. He knows the difference between right and wrong. He harassed my daughter and trespassed on my property. That's why the police came." The neighbors murmured among themselves. I saw a few shaking their heads. For the first time, Karen's support in the community was slipping. People were starting to see the truth. But Tyler wasn't ready to surrender his arrogance. He stormed toward my driveway, shouting, "You can't tell me what to do. This whole place belongs to us." Then, before I could react, he grabbed a rock and hurled it at my mailbox. The metal rang out with a loud clang as the side caved in. My kids screamed from inside the house. That was it. The final line had been crossed. I pulled out my phone and called the police again. This time not for warnings, but for charges. The same officer returned, this time with backup. The neighbors stood in stunned silence as the officers approached Tyler. "Son, we need to talk," one of them said. Tyler tried to laugh it off, but when the handcuffs came out, the color drained from his face. Karen shrieked, "You can't do this! He's just a kid." But the officer silenced her with a single line. "He's not just a kid. He's old enough to know better, and you, ma'am, have done nothing but encourage his behavior. Actions have consequences." The snap of those handcuffs was the sweetest sound of justice my family had heard in weeks. Tyler's smirk was gone, replaced by panic. Karen tried to follow the officers, ranting about lawsuits and bragging about her connections, but it was useless. Her son was taken away, and for the first time, the neighborhood saw her for exactly who she was. That night, my home was finally quiet. My daughter slept peacefully, no longer trembling at the sound of dirt bikes. And Karen, well, she had finally learned that entitlement doesn't shield anyone from the law. So the next time someone shrugs off bad behavior with, "He's just a kid," remember this: sometimes just a kid is exactly the problem.